you can show up on Sunday morning. You can sit there and, to use an expression, be spoon-fed, maybe shake one or two hands, and you can leave without any real accountability or participation on your part. And I think that's the difference in a life group or a home group, is that's your opportunity, is to show up, to engage, and to get as much out of it as you can.
Well, good morning, Castleview. Good to see you again. I'm excited about today's episode. We have a brand new life group teacher with us today, and he's going to be starting his class in about 2 weeks. And Tim, it's great to have you here on the podcast this morning. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here.
Yeah, you just had a huge life event take place. Tell us about it.
Yeah, you're talking about the adoption?
Well, it seems pretty big to me.
One of the bigger ones.
Yeah. Well, if there's anything bigger, tell us also about that.
Yeah. So we just completed the adoption in September of our daughter, Talia. She's 2 years old in November.
Okay.
And so we traveled over to India. We were there for 8 days. And I think it was day 2, we got her. And then the rest of the days we were going through paperwork. And
had you seen her at all before you got there? Like, you have phone calls before you even traveled there. I mean, that's it seems like that would be a daunting process.
Yeah. Well, it is if you're kind of carrying all the weight yourself. If you are able to give it to the Lord and trust in the Lord, that's where we were at. And so it really wasn't too daunting for us. But in answer to your question, we had been paired with her many months. I think 6 months before we were able to travel, or maybe even sooner than that. And the way that works is you build a profile of what you're hoping for in adopting a child, and they ask you a series of questions. Would you accept this? Would you accept this? Would you accept this? And you go through that and you build that profile, and then as soon as you submit it, they will start sending applicants to you for your review.
Okay.
And my wife and I, very first applicant. Yep, absolutely. That's the one. It's like this blurry, stretched out photo of this little girl. You can't really see what's there, but we just felt like that was what the Lord was laying on our hearts to do, and we were able to have 2 different Zoom calls with her. Now, it was really hard to do because in order for us to process the language barrier, we had to have 4 people on the call. And it was done on an iPhone. So imagine 4 little screens on the iPhone.
Right.
And then, her screen is the one you can see her. There was a lot of noise. We don't understand anything that they're saying. They don't understand anything that we're saying.
What an awkward conversation in some ways.
It's this little 1.5-year-old girl that you're trying to say, hey, we're here, we're on the phone. And they don't care about that at all.
Right,
so
right.
I don't know that it was really meaningful at all to her.
Sure.
Of course, for us, it was like, wow, this is wonderful. This is amazing. We get to see what's going on. But
when did you all first start feeling like we want to adopt? I mean, you've got 3 just great kids. I mean, Ruthie came up to me on Sunday and just sweet, very different personalities. You kind of alluded to that on Sunday night a little bit. They all have their own different personalities. Great kids. When did you guys start thinking, we want to adopt? We're praying about this, or where did that come from?
Well, I would say that it was right at the start of our marriage. Actually, when we first started thinking about having children, my wife had some personal medical issues, and we were told that you will likely never have children.
Is that right?
And we thought, man, it's so discouraging if that's what you're hoping for and that's what you're wanting. And so our immediate reaction to that was to begin thinking about adoption. Right around that time, maybe a few years before that time, my parents had adopted 2 girls from China. And both of them have very severe special needs and disabilities. And so just to see their heart in that and that example for us, it really made us think about that opportunity as well. And so we thought about it right away. Of course, the Lord has blessed us with children, our own children, but that never left us. And so, we were having our own children, and the whole time we're thinking, yeah, but we still want to see about that as an opportunity as well. And so, we had our son, William. Every single one of our kids, you'll have to take my word for it, but every single one was life-threatening for the child and for my wife.
Really?
The last one was, it's just a miracle.
During pregnancy,
Yeah,
delivery?
well, delivery. During
okay.
delivery. Every single one could have turned out so much differently.
Wow.
And so the last one, that's when she actually had a hysterectomy, and so we weren't able to have any more of our own biological children. And so that's when it was like, okay, well, we've been thinking about this for a while.
Yeah.
We've been given so much.
Yeah.
What is a way that we can potentially give back?
I love that. 3 wasn't enough for you all.
No.
Yeah.
And
is 4 enough for you?
We're right in the middle of praying about it.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I grew up with 6 brothers and sisters.
Okay.
My siblings are all around the U.S. I have 2 siblings who have already adopted again. They've done their own adoptions. My sister's a foster parent in Florida.
Wow.
So it's.
Do you think a lot of that comes from mom and dad doing that and
hugely?
Seeing? Sure.
Yeah, hugely so. And just what I would tell people is often it's easy to look at someone who has adopted and think, wow, they've really done something for that child. But I would say that's not at all how the adopted parents look at it. We don't look at it I don't look at it that way. I look at it as I've been given this tremendous gift, this tremendous blessing from the Lord. And it is not at all about what I'm doing. It is, it's really different than that. So
yeah. Well, she seems, Talia Joy is her name.
Yep.
And she seems to fit that really well.
Yeah.
By the way, Talia, what does that come from?
It was kind of based on the initials. My initials are TJ.
Okay.
And so we kind of wanted to line that up.
Okay.
The name Talia, it means something like blessing from heaven. Or dew on the ground, something like that.
Love it.
So that fit.
What do the kids think so far? Because that's got to be a huge adjustment, right? I mean, you've got these 3 kids that are very full of life, and you've got a very. I've been there. I've had dinner at your house. I mean, it's we're having conversations. Hey, pastor. Hey, let me show you this. Let me do this little flip for you. Let me teach you what I learned at school today. Yeah. Very active household. How have they all come together, and how do they enjoy having Talia there?
If anything, I would say that it has made the whole process a lot better and easier having children, because Talia now has someone to look to for an example, and she can pick up on patterns really quickly and really well. And so when for example, she bonded to mom, to Emily, really quickly
right away, but
she had a lot of fear about me. And we think part of that is just the orphanage itself. It was all women. And so now there's someone with a beard, and they're tall, and they have a deep voice. And so she was very resistant to that and very fearful about that. But her seeing me hold my other children and play with them has really broken the ice and really allowed her and I to build a relationship. And so I think it's really been helpful having them. For them, regarding their own reaction to it, I would say that it's not without challenges. You have this level of attention that you're used to getting from mom and dad, and suddenly that's
it's been
reduced.
Split up a little bit.
And I think probably for our youngest son, William, is probably who it's hit the hardest, because he was the youngest. He was the baby of the family, and so I've noticed with him especially that he will watch me do something with her, and then he'll say, "Hey, my turn. I want to do it," no matter what it is. It's my turn. I want to do that. But for Ruth, it is a dream come true.
Yeah.
She has two brothers, and she's
Yes,
now I've got a
yes,
sister.
I've got
This
a
is
sister.
amazing.
Yeah, she can be that mom that she wants
Oh
to
yeah,
be even
very
more.
much so.
Because I know the guys probably sometimes
Yeah.
are like, "Hey, I don't need a mom. I got
Yeah,
one.
right.
I don't need two." You know. Well, I think it's amazing. I think that picture of adoption is. I would imagine in your heart, that just has to fulfill that picture we have with God
Yeah.
so much more, right?
Yeah.
And to understand that, okay, she has been placed into this family. She is just as much a part of our family as
100%.
Ruth is, or
Yeah.
William or James,
That's
or
right.
any of these other kids. And it's a neat picture, and I love that you guys have done that. And here you've got somebody that you can reach with the gospel now, and I know you pray already for her salvation. Just 2 years old, but you pray
Yeah.
for salvation already.
Yep.
Well, you've been a part of our life groups for a while. Matter of fact, how long have you guys been at the church now?
I think it's coming up on 3 years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you got plugged into life groups pretty early on, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
right
That's
off the
right.
bat. Okay, you've been in Jeremy's class now for how long have you been in Jeremy's class?
Well, we were in his class, definitely over at the Sutton's facility.
Okay,
Um,
so pretty early on.
yeah.
Yeah. What have you enjoyed about it? Being in his class, I think Jeremy is a great teacher. One of the things we really love about Life Group is we believe that it needs to be connection, right? Fellowship, and so we've got different life groups. We have some teachers that are much more comfortable in the lectern setting and kind of putting rows out there, and that's fine. Some people really enjoy that, and some people like that as a learner, as a part of the class. But to me, I love that round tables, and I love that connection and so there's a lot of dialogue in that class. What have you all enjoyed about Jeremy's class so far?
Well, that's certainly a major part of it. I would say, for me, one of the more valuable things, aside from just the study of the Word of God, is we're one of the younger couples in that class, and we have been for a while. I think at the time when we started, it just worked better for the young children that we had, and when it met.
Yeah.
And so we ended up in that class, and then
Yeah.
we kind of stayed with it. But being able to hear from people who are a little bit older and have children who are older than ours, and children going to college already, talk about their own experiences and their own knowledge and wisdom and the things that they've learned in their lives, and as it relates to what we're studying, has just been tremendous. I cannot get enough of that as I look at the responsibility ahead of me with my own children and my own family, and the opportunity ahead of me. Boy, I recognize my own inadequacies, and I will take as much advice and wisdom and experience from others who've already gone that route,
Right.
to learn from them whatever I can.
Yeah.
So that's been huge. I've really been grateful for that.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? You can learn something from everybody, right? We talk about that quite a bit. There's people in our church that you might not take their parenting necessarily, but financially, they're
Right.
really business mind, or they're just there's you can learn something from just about anybody.
Yeah.
And I think one of the strengths of our life groups, our classes, we're going through Proverbs right now, Jeremy's class, and just to be able to sit down and hear different perspectives of life, I think is really valuable. What is your what's your plan moving forward as far as what are you going to teach coming up, and where are you guys headed as a class?
So I want to pick right back up in Proverbs, because that's right. We've been in Jeremy's class, and we've been going through Proverbs. We're in Proverbs chapter 4 now, and getting to the end of chapter 4. And it's just been such a great study. The book of Proverbs has so many things that you can take directly to your life and apply. And then what I really enjoy doing is looking at that through the lens of the New Testament and saying, okay, this is wisdom.
Yeah.
And then this is our Christian walk, and this is our relationship with Jesus Christ. And now let's apply wisdom to that. And so I think it's a great study. I want to continue doing that. I think it's possible that we may go a little bit different pace, maybe faster, maybe slower, whatever the case may be. But that's what I'd like.
I thought you did such a good job. Of course, you taught this past Sunday evening, and taking the principle that we have in Proverbs, and then taking it and giving us the application through Paul and in First Corinthians and talking about meat and all of that. I really thought that was well done. I can tell that you're a lawyer, because you just kind of you built the case and you said, hey, we're gonna go somewhere with this at the end of it. There's gonna be a point to this, but I've got to lay all the groundwork. Do you think your education as a lawyer kind of leads to that kind of thinking?
It very likely does. I would say I am a very analytical person.
Yeah.
So I mull things over as
Yeah.
I drive. I
Yeah.
think about things as I'm laying in my bed, and I just take it apart and put it back together. And I don't know if that is why I'm a lawyer, or if I'm a lawyer and that's why I think that way.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's that is certainly part of it for me. I really like the logic behind things, and so things have to be logical. They have to make sense to me. I wouldn't say I'm above average intelligence. Like, it has to be clear. I have to understand it, and if I can't, then it's not good enough. I've got to break it down and figure out why. And,
Sure.
all of that.
I have people tell me a lot, "Oh, I love your preaching. It's so simple." And I think to myself, well, you know why? Because I'm really simple.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not the deep. You're a much deeper thinker than I am. And I think you do a really interesting job, and a really good job of just kind of breaking things out. So we're breaking this class up. And by the way, we talked Sunday night about we're breaking it up because it's we're not trying to get influences away from each other. This isn't, hey, you sit in the back of the class, you sit in the front. It's been successful. That class has been really growing and growing and growing, and we feel like probably the best way, if we want to form relationships in you got your worship time in the morning, and you've got this bigger church that comes together. You really need to make relationships, and when you're getting up to 35 people on not pretty normal, and you've that little circle, that table that you started getting a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and all of a sudden you've got 8-9 tables, and you're looking across and trying to have a conversation with someone that's 40 feet away from you. You lose that intimacy a little bit, and that connection. And so the reason we're doing that is number one, we want to have better fellowship. Number two, we think that there's different groups like you're talking about. We've got some younger parents that are in the class we're in right now. What do you hope to accomplish with your class? What you look a year ahead, you look 2 years ahead. What are some of the things that you hope? Hey, I hope our class becomes. I hope this becomes our personality. This is one of the goals I want to see. What do you want to see happen with your class?
Well, that's a good question. I think I'll answer it more of what are my thoughts on how to lead the class, or how am I going to approach the leadership of the class? And I would say, for one thing, it has to be biblical. The study has to be biblical. I think my philosophy on that is, the stronger the point is that you're trying to make, the more that it should be supported by Scripture. Because I think if you're making a point that Solomon was the author of Proverbs, then I don't think you need a whole lot of verses to back that up. I think that's not a very significant point. But if I'm making the argument that we have freedom in Christ through our salvation from sin, then I want to have a lot more to support that in order to make that point. So it has to be biblical. I think it has to be simple and clear. And then it has to be specific and applicable as possible. I think of course, I'd like to see growth. I'd like to see people in the class that are in a similar stage of life as me, because then I can learn from them. We can learn from each other. I love to hear from people in the class. I want it to be conversational, and I want us to be able to hold each other accountable. To your point, with a larger class, it becomes easier to simply show up to class, sit there, participate, and then leave. And it starts to feel more like Sunday morning. And I think Sunday morning is very valuable. And if all you do is come to church on Sunday morning,
Sure.
please keep doing that. And we're glad you're there.
Right.
Truly.
Yeah.
You have singing, you have patterns of worship, you have preaching that are all very valuable on Sunday morning. But you can show up on Sunday morning. You can sit there and, to use an expression, be spoon-fed.
Yeah.
Maybe shake one or two hands and you can leave without any real accountability or participation on your part.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the difference in a life group or a home group.
Mm-hmm.
Is that's your opportunity. That is your, I would say, obligation, is to show up, to engage, and to get as much out of it as you can. And when you have a smaller group, when you have 10, 12, 18 people that you're seeing week to week, you get to know about their lives. You get to know their prayer requests. You get to hear from them things that they're rejoicing in, things that they're burdened with. And you get to know these people. We have other activities. We have lunch, potlucks, and we have bowling night that you do outside of Sunday morning. You don't do that on Sunday morning typically.
Right. Yeah,
Most
not usually.
churches. So
it's a good idea, though. I'm going to write that down. Bowling Sunday morning.
Yeah. So you have that opportunity in a life group, in a home group, that you don't have on Sunday morning. And I would say to take advantage of it, even just accountability.
Yeah.
You're showing up.
Isn't there something different about? I think a lot of people look at church as something I receive. And to a degree there is, right? I mean, you're going to come in, you're going to hear the words, you are going to receive some things. There's even some music that is directed that might be a special that, okay, we're going to sit, we're going to enjoy this. But you look at the early church, and it wasn't all about receiving, right? I mean, it's very active. There is an accountability. There is a friendship, that koinonia, that the people that are coming together relationally. You talked about prayer requests. I mean, when you have a group of 8 to 15, for example, you're going to be sitting next to the same people. You're going to be hearing their requests, hearing their burdens. And now you've got not a place to hide in the big church. Now you are actively part of, hey, I've got people that I need to help meet their needs. I've got people that I need to pray for. I've got people that I can reach out to and be a part. And by the way, I can be known, and I've got people that are helping me with that at the same time. I think there is something valuable to, I'm a part. I'm not just here to get something. I'm here to give something. And I think the life group helps certainly fulfill that role for sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think if you're willing to commit to something like that, even just, I would say, try it for 12 weeks. Say, I'm going to commit to this for 12 weeks.
Yeah.
See if you're better off.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
You will be. You will be. And the reason I know that is because I've done that.
Yeah.
I've been in that. And I said, okay, I'm just going to go.
Yeah.
Other churches that I've been, I'm just going to go to this men's group for 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Just see what it's like. And years later, I'm still attending the same men's group because I have seen the transformation in my own life.
Yep.
I've seen the difference that it makes.
Yeah.
And I really think if you're willing to try it and commit to it and go back, don't go once, okay, go back.
Yeah. And there's a lot of times, even for life group, there are some days that in the afternoon, I kind of go, I'm kind of tired. I don't know.
Yeah.
You got to get the kids together. You got to, I don't know. Do I really feel like going and connecting that way? And I find myself sitting there every Sunday night, just kind of sitting back going, this is really good. Yeah. I needed this right now. I needed what I'm hearing. I need the fellowship. I need the prayers of fellow believers. I find the same thing as you do. There's incredible value, I think, in those relationships.
I would say test it and see what you think. And I think you'll find that it's valuable. I've said this before. You will always have a good reason not to go. You'll always have a good reason. You can always come up with one. At least I can.
Right.
And I think there are legitimate reasons. Of course there are. If you're sick,
sure.
if you've
got, if you're sick, don't bring it here. If you're legitimately sick, don't come here with it.
But if you're thinking about it in terms of if you're evaluating it and you determine that it really comes down to convenience, then that to me is a reflection of your priorities. And the weight that I feel, whether I'm up for going to church or not, is the example that I'm setting for my family and my children as to what's important to me.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big responsibility. If
Yeah.
if my children see me attend church only when it is convenient, and attend home group only when it is convenient, and that's the attitude that I take, well, then how can I expect them to value it at all and go to church at all?
Yeah, that's right. You are that example. Well, I wasn't going to ask you this, but I'm going to ask you now that you brought that up. We talked about the home on Sunday, blueprints of a godly home. We talked about, God must be the builder of the home. Parents must lead the home. Limits have to be set in the home, right? There's some things that you say, we're not crossing this line, whether it's a biblical principle or biblical truth, or just our home works better when we do it this way. And then love must permeate the home. Did anything stand out to you in the message this past week that you thought, you know what, this has been good for our home, or this is something that if I could go back and talk to a young parent, I've learned this, and this would be the advice that I would give a young parent about, you've got 4 now. I mean, you're not dabbling anymore. You're a proven veteran. You've been through some of the battles.
Yeah.
And any advice you'd give a young parent?
I always say my kids are better when they're sleeping. I really appreciated the message on Sunday. I think one of the weightiest things that I feel, my faith is important. My marriage is very important. My responsibility as a father. Someone said something to me one time. I think Ruth was 4 or 5 years old, and they said, well, you only got her for 14 more years. And I said, what a terrible thing to say, Wow. But it's true. Yeah. I have this very short window of opportunity and influence over my children's life. And to all your points, I would say standards in your home. They're there to protect you. They're not there to keep you from having fun. They're there to protect you. When you look in the Bible, shelter is never a bad thing. It's never a bad thing. I've heard criticism from people before where they've said, well, you don't want your kids to be too sheltered.
Yeah.
And by the way, I was homeschooled all the way through high school. I was the definition of too sheltered, okay? If you want to use that expression.
Sure.
But you don't find a warning against shelter in the Bible. You don't see any part of the Bible where it says, hey, don't shelter your kids too much. That's our job, is to protect our families. And that's what standards do. Standards are unbiased. You don't have to be like, I'm sorry, we can't do it for you. We can do it for you. To your example, it's just the rule. It's just the rule, the way that it is.
Yeah.
And when if you look at the news at all, you see that there are really dark forces out there seeking to pervert the hearts and minds of our children and destroy their lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that is such a obligation and responsibility and warning to parents. And then I would say the last part, the love, I think is so essential. Your child wants to have a good relationship with you. They want to please you. They want to make you proud of them. And any opportunity that you have to show them you're proud of them, to show them that you love them. There are times when I lose my temper with my children, and I regret how loud I get, or things that I say in anger to my children. And so I could shrug that off and say, well, it's their fault, because it's their fault. Or I could go back to them and say, listen, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
I was really scared that you were going to get hurt because you were running away from me.
Yeah.
And it made me react loud, and I shouldn't have done that. I love you, and I'm proud of you, and I want to keep you safe.
Yeah.
And that's why. And I think that as much love as you can pour into your child, it's like watering a plant that hasn't been received enough water, you can just see them soak it up. And I think it should be a part of everything. It should be a part of your discipline. It should be a part of your games, your fun. It should be a part of your breakfast, your lunch, your whatever opportunity you have to fellowship with them.
Yeah, enjoy those days. They go by so incredibly fast. I can't believe Debbie and I are so surprised all the time that we've got a 26-year-old and a 24-year-old. And you said someone told you 14 years. As those years, as they get older, you have them for less time, right? And then their hearts get more distracted as time goes on too, right? And not in all bad ways. I mean, right now, your 8-year-old, your 5 or whatever all the ages are right now. Their whole life is wrapped up with you, right? There's not a lot of other extracurricular activities. There's not a lot of other relationships. And so your influence gets a little bit divided as they get older. And so you've got to take those moments. And kids they just eat up that love and to hear that, hey, mom and dad are proud of me. I think that makes a big difference. You mentioned the standards, the limits I talked about on Sunday. I said about the phone illustration I used with our oldest, I said he was 14. He and I were texting back and forth this week. He was 15 at the time when we got him his first phone. Actually, it wasn't 14; it was actually 15. And I remember that there was a pressure, right? Because the 10-year-old next door has a phone. All the 12-year-olds have phones. Dad, I'm 50. I'm almost 15 years old, and I don't have one. And then, of course, we went with the slider phone, just the texting phone or whatever. And we don't regret that. We look back at that now and say, you mentioned a minute ago that the culture is trying so hard to shape our kids, and it's important for us to be the strongest influence and to keep some of those forces out. They're going to learn about stuff. It's all right. They may be embarrassed a time or two because everyone knew something they didn't know. I'd rather that than, well, you know what? I've known about that since I was 11. My eyes were open when I was 12 over this stuff. And hey, it's okay to be simple concerning evil. And I think actually that's when I was growing up, I think there were some things I wish I didn't know, and that I'd never heard about. So I think that is important for sure.
Well, and you live life with them. I have cousins who are in relationships that maybe I don't agree with. That don't align with my view of what the Bible says, and I have friends and we have coworkers, and you're not going to be able to keep your child from ever seeing or being exposed to something that you disagree with. And that's your opportunity to live life with them and explain it to them and say, this is, my daughter came over from playing with our neighbor's daughter. And she said, she doesn't believe in God. She told me that God's not real. She said her dad said that God's not real. And that was a good opportunity for me to say, not everyone does. There are lots of people who don't believe in God. Well, why not? Well, they have decided in their hearts and minds, and that's the conversation that you get to have then. So you definitely live life with your children, with your family. And I would say, in terms of advice, my father-in-law told this to me, and I pass it on any opportunity I can. I pass this on. He said, you can make a lot of mistakes as a parent, but you'll never make a mistake giving your child the Word of God. So you'll never make a mistake giving them the Word of God. And that to me is very comforting. That's a big comfort. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes as a parent.
Sure.
But giving my child the opportunity, whether it's through Awana's church on Sunday, Sunday school, whatever it may be, memorizing verses at home, reading the Bible to them as a family in the morning and the evenings, that will not be a mistake.
Yeah, that's right. I think Deuteronomy 6 talks about two things in there. When you get this picture of walking by the way and sitting and all the time, right? And so number one, it talks about the truth. You need to give them the truth. You're responsible as a parent to equip them with the truth. The other side of that is Well, there's got to be time spent. There's got to be relationship. There's got to be conversation. And I always wanted with our boys to keep an open relationship. I wanted to enjoy things when it was time to enjoy things, goof around when it's time to goof around, so that when you have a relationship, so that when it's time to get serious about something, you had an open door. I remember talking with our oldest, when we had our man talk. We went away for a couple days and we talked about all the man stuff and things that I knew he would soon hear about. But I wanted him to have the right perspective and to really understand the truth about it. And one of the things I told him was, hey, Chase, if you have any questions, you don't need to ask a neighbor. You don't need to ask the kids, the friends, the whatever. Ask me, come, let's talk about it anytime. My door is always open. Come and talk to me. And for the first couple of years after that, he'd oftentimes walk in my office door or whatever, and he'd say, hey, Dad, can I talk to you for a minute? And I'd say, hey, sure, sit down. He'd close the door, and I thought, all right, here we go. And he would take advantage of it. But I'm so glad that he did, because there were things I'd be able to say, well, let me tell you what the truth is about that. Yeah. But sometimes he'd come in and say, hey, they use this word. I don't understand that word. Yeah. And sometimes I'd say, well, it's a crude, here's what it is. Sometimes I'd say, you know what? I don't even want to define that word yet. We'll talk about that at some point, but I don't want you to use it. And I want you to know that that's not the way that we talk. And there were other times that it just opened us up to some really interesting conversations. And I've always been told, or I don't know if I've been told, you hear it, and I think I always felt it, that's going to be a really awkward conversation. It's really not. It really is, hey, you know what? We're just talking about life here. And this is an amazing thing that God created. And now we get to have this conversation. Yeah. And I want you to have God's perspective on something. But I think to have those kind of things, you do need to keep a relationship like you're talking about. Hey, Dad's proud of you. Hey, Dad loves you. Hey, I'm sorry that I had that temper. And by the way, that's a great thing to think about too. I think if they're learning from us, we need to put on display, we can apologize too. Yeah. Dad makes mistakes too.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just Mom that makes mistakes. Dad does too.
That was your fault, but
you drew that out of
me. But I usually I'll try to explain to him, like, look, the reason that I got so frustrated by that is because you were running and there were cars.
Yes.
I was really worried about you.
Sure.
And it's not an excuse. It's just you're trying to tie it to Dad's not just an angry, mean person.
Right.
Like, Dad, I was afraid for your safety.
Yeah,
I don't want you to get hurt.
Yeah.
That's what so if I can, I try to tie it to that. Now, there are other times when there's nothing to tie it to, and you just have to.
They weren't running into traffic. It was just a bad. Yeah, right. I understand. Well, listen, I just can't tell you how excited we are about this class starting, and I want you and Emily to know how much we appreciate both of you and doing a great job with the kids. When I see them on Sundays, they're happy, they're full of joy. They've got a lot of energy, which I know those are challenging days. I remember that. We used to sit our kids down for devotions, and so I can only imagine in your house what it's like too. My two boys, that was the time that they wanted to goof around. You're trying to be serious. All right, everyone sit down. We're going to read this Bible verse. We're going to have this little lesson. And those were the goofiest times that it used to drive me crazy that we're trying to be serious right now. And so I know you're in the middle of a lot of those challenging days of your life. But I want you both to know you're doing a great job. Your kids are very respectful. And we're excited about you all, not just being up here at the church, but we're excited about the part that you guys are playing in it. And so your class is getting ready to start. And so your target audience for your class would be young parents, with children Awana age, about the age of yours. You've got anywhere from 2 all the way to 8. We don't tell anyone that, okay, you can't go to this class if you don't meet this age or whatever. But I do think there's some value in, hey, we're all about the same age, right? Yeah. And we can do activity together. We understand each other a little bit too.
Yeah.
So very excited about this class starting up. You're starting March 2nd. Sunday nights, and you're going to be in the Aspen room. And so that very first adult classroom on the second level. And listen, we're excited about it getting started. Anything you would encourage anyone if they're thinking about your class? Anything you'd say to them? Hey, we'd love to have whatever. I don't know. I'm giving you the final word here on this episode.
Sure. Yeah. There's a couple things. First of all, I would say, please don't feel like you need to be qualified to go to any class. You're welcome to come to a class. You didn't do the reading. You didn't bring your Bible.
Yeah.
Don't let those limitations keep you from an otherwise participating and fellowshipping with us. So I would strongly recommend that. I would say as much as you can, prepare for the class, commit to the class, engage with the class. And what I try to do, what Jeremy has done and really been a great example of, is I'm going to try to ask questions. Now, some people are confident and they have no problem sharing what they're thinking, and others don't. And others are never going to feel comfortable speaking in a group setting. But I would say, even if you're not wanting to answer, think about how you would answer the question in your own mind. And you don't have to share it. Now, if you ever get comfortable enough, please feel free to share. I love to hear from people. But take the opportunity to think about how you'd answer the question, and then see how you can apply what we've talked about in your life week to week. I really think people will see you'll see a difference. And the reason I think that is because I have done that. I've seen a difference in my own life.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm so excited as well, is just because of how valuable home group, men's group, those types of groups have been to me. I've seen tangible results from them. I'm very grateful for those opportunities, and I want that for other people.
Good. And I think that helps having 8 to 15 in a classroom, because sometimes when there's 35, you kind of feel like, well, this is a little church. I don't want to say anything in this little church. All right, last thing, and we'll be done with this. You're a lawyer.
Yeah.
President Trump has come into office with a vengeance. I mean, whirlwind. Have you ever? It's amazing to see what is happening right now with the executive orders. What surprised you so far? Anything stand out in his short? I mean, what are we, a month in?
Yeah.
Well, what are we? Yeah, I guess about a month in or so.
Yeah. Well, I think if you follow politics with any consistency, you get used to people saying one thing and doing another.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that has been so different about President Trump, whether you like him or not, is that he does what he says he's going to do.
Yeah.
I have seen other conservative politicians that I voted for and support not fulfill their assurances, even in the same way that he does. I think they said, some statistics said 70% of Americans agree that he is doing what he said he was going to do.
Yeah.
And that's really something. I think what's been surprising to me, I do not view Trump as a moral guide at all. I hope that he knows the truth about Jesus Christ and has accepted Christ as his Savior, but I don't have any sort of confidence in that or any reliance on that.
Yeah.
I think it has been surprising to me the social conservative issues and the stand that he's taken on those, because I think it would be so easy for him to say, look, when it comes to the issue of transgender athletes in women's sports, I don't need to get involved. I don't care about that. That's a social issue.
Sure.
Let's work on policy.
Sure.
No. Pardoning the pro-life protesters who've been politically prosecuted under the last presidency.
Yeah.
What reason does he have to do that?
Let's face it. He's not running for another term.
Yeah.
He's finished. He's doing, I think, the things that he said he would.
Yeah.
And the things that and I agree with you. He's not, I wouldn't look up to him for my morality, right? There's no question. It's interesting, though, that he's a businessman. I do think part of the reason he can, in my opinion, I feel like a lot of the reason he can do what he says he can do, because we've had politicians that, I'm going to do this and here's my platform, and they get in and nothing happens. I think so much of that is because so many politicians are bought and paid for.
Yeah.
That to get to that level in politics,
Mm-hmm.
you had to make some promises.
Yeah.
You had to at some point say, this is, okay, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. And by the time they get to that level, I mean, you're kind of a puppet in some ways.
Yeah.
And here he comes in and he just doesn't have those attachments. He's got his own financial backing and all of that.
Yep.
Which I think has been unique
Yeah,
for him.
I agree.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're a month in. I'm very optimistic. I am sure that he will not always make decisions that I will agree with, because he hasn't previously.
No. Yes.
But I think it's really putting the country, I think, on a better track.
Hopeful.
And I'm very hopeful about cultural changes.
Yeah.
And standing up to some of the issues that we're facing.
Yeah,
that
right. And
Really
we're facing them for
shocking.
sure.
But
we're facing them. Well, listen, thanks for being on today and for joining me. Excited about your class and praying for you. And Castleview, thank you for watching today. Listen, if you've not gotten plugged into a life group yet, I just will tell you, as Tim said, it's so important. It's so good for your faith. It's so good to have a group of people that you're doing life with. And it really does begin to change the way that you see your church and your faith. And so I want to encourage you, if you're not in a life group, get involved in one. We've got several in the morning that meet either at 9:20 or 10:45. We've got some that meet in the evening at 6 o'clock. And we'd love to have you be a part of that. Hey, listen, thank you for joining us today on this episode of the Castleview Baptist Podcast. We hope to see you again next week.